So, I thought everything were great. And I was just scaling and hitting my target ROAS until I got some numbers back from my accountant. It didn't really add up. So I got another accountant agency to go over the numbers. I just kept on scaling because I was hitting my targets. Then I got those numbers back and found out I was in a big minus. So I thought I was profitable, but I weren't.
All right, welcome back to the PPC Mastery Podcast. We have another special guest today. It's the founder and CEO of ProfitMetrics, Frederik Boysen. Welcome to the podcast. It's exciting to have you. We've connected years ago, and since then have done multiple workshops together. You've done multiple workshops in the PPC Hub, and it's been so much fun just working together with you and sending people over to ProfitMetrics, because I just think that is one of the most important and easiest to understand. That is such an important and good tool to use as Google Ads specialists. So it's my pleasure to have you on and talk all things profit today.
Thank you, Miles. Yeah, and we just met up in real life.
Yeah, that was also very fun. And it's
cool.
Not going to be the last one.
Definitely not.
All right, so Frederik, tell us something about yourself that most people don't know.
There's probably a lot people don't know, but in relations to Google Ads, the first time I ever ran any Google Ads, I got scammed. I think it was like 16 or 18 years ago when I made my first e-commerce business. It was a supplement company selling like fitness and bodybuilding supplements. And I went to this agency because I wanted to run Google AdWords. And there you bought, or they actually called me up, but you bought these click packages. And I think they were like, I thought I bought 1,000 clicks and it was maybe 50 euro cent per click. And then in 1 or 2 days, all of the clicks were used because I had a bar which were called Mammoth bar. And then all of the clicks were used on Mammoth because that was the cheapest click ever. And then they were all used. And I did it like a couple of times because I couldn't really understand it. And that was like my first lessons with Google Ads and the way everything were running back in the days where you bought clicks and so on. And then I started to look into it myself and found out that why am I paying for clicks of just random? Why don't I pay for the clicks that are actually correct for my business? So that was the first time I tried using money on Google Ads, and
it failed. That was the wild west back then, right?
It was. It was. It really, really was. And you got so many people just calling you up, and I didn't understand anything about it. Conversion tracking, nobody had it. It was just, random clicks you were paying for.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's a good story. So what is something that you believe about Google Ads that most people would disagree with?
Right now, I'm so much into tracking and attribution where there is a tendency for people to think that we just set up server-side tag manager for Google Ads and then we are server-side and then everything is working. What most people don't know is actually that server-side to Google Ads through the tag manager is actually not real server-side because it goes in from the browser often. It's actually a thank you page script that fires and send it in through the client and into then the server-side tag manager. But it doesn't send from their server-side to Google Ads. It has to go out with the conversion linker to the browser before it actually sends server-side and add a cookie, which means that the user still needs to be on that thank you page for it to send the data server-side to Google Ads. And what I've seen in the many years I've been working with server-side is that that's actually one of the biggest problems, that either there is some kind of script blocker or ad blocker or people actually closing down the thank you page or people don't wait for PayPal or Klarna to redirect and so on. That's probably one of the biggest things that real server-side actually solves. It's sometimes all the way up to 15% of conversions that are actually dropped there. And it is possible in server-side tag manager to actually send the data in server-side, but it has to go out for Google Ads. It has to go out with this conversion linker. So real server-side is essentially using click IDs. So 𝗀𝗏, 𝗀𝗏, 𝗣𝗚 or enhanced conversions for leads as well. But enhanced conversions for leads only attributes if somebody filled out an email form submit on the website. It doesn't work because many think that just if Google have a login, then if you send in a enhanced conversion for leads conversion without click ID, then it will attribute. But we have tested it a lot. It needs to actually have that email at some point being identified with a hashed email on the site. But that is also real server side if it actually did that, but it has to happen in the browser. So the only real option right now to go fully server side is click IDs at the moment.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, let's definitely dive into that more. But let's take it one step back first, because you are the founder of ProfitMetrics, and you help primarily ecom businesses track profits and get those insights so that they can use that information to report on, steer on with their marketing efforts. Could you talk a little bit about your backstory? So how did you get into profit tracking? When did you discover that this was an opportunity? Why did you start ProfitMetrics? Because I think there's an interesting story that I don't even know the ins and outs of. So if you could talk to us a little bit about that, that would be super nice.
Yeah, so from what I told before, I've had a lot of e-commerce companies, different with success, some with not as much. But essentially, I've just been working. I've also been on having a company where we made websites and e-commerce platforms and so on. But essentially, I've just had a lot of e-commerce companies. And back in 2015, I had an e-commerce company where I was scaling extremely hard. Everything were going really good, I thought. I think we had 400,000 email subscribers only in Denmark. Whoa. And we are only, I think we're 6 million now here in Denmark. So that was a lot where it was this kind of daily deal sign. It was when Groupon and these other was around. So people got an email in the morning, and if they didn't open, they got a new one in the evening. Wow. So it was a lot of emails and a lot of capturing emails. I used Google, I used the Meta, and Meta was very, very early, or it was Facebook at that time. And I was sitting like a day trader. So I had these tools where I could flip up a lot of ads. It was before video ads, and I just flipped up a lot of video or a lot of text and image ads. And then, around lunchtime, I could see which one was the winner. And then I scaled it up, and I used like 3,000-4,000 euros a day on Facebook. So that was a lot at that point. I also got invited over to Facebook doing the first Scandinavian case study because there was not that many e-commerce businesses using a lot of money on Facebook. It was Google who had primarily the most of that spent at that point. So, I thought everything were great. And I was just scaling and hitting my target ROAS until I got some numbers back from my accountant. It didn't really add up. So I got another accountant agency to go over the numbers. And here I was just I think it was like 3, 4, 5 months or something. I didn't have the numbers. So I just kept on scaling because I was hitting my targets. Then I got those numbers back and found out I was in a big minus. So I thought I was profitable, but I weren't. And some of the problems that happened there were both due to double attribution. I had a big email list, and then Facebook took credit for some conversions that actually came from the email. The same with Google. And then the big thing was that I had calculated I was marketing a product on Facebook, but people ended up buying other products with it, or not even that product, with lower margins. I started introducing a lot of electronics and perfumes and stuff like that with lower margins. So my average ROAS was not correct anymore, but I couldn't see it because I thought people were buying what I was advertising for them. So I knew I had to do something. I knew some were profitable of that ad spend, but now I also knew something weren't profitable. The problem was I couldn't see it. So the only thing I could do to save my business was to turn down the ad spend. What happened then was, of course, then the sales didn't come in. Yeah. I got a huge cash flow problem, and it actually went so bad, so I went bankrupt. I couldn't save the company, but I was really lucky to find an investor that believed in the idea. So we bought up the bankruptcy, paid out the creditors, and so on. And so the site were essentially closed for a week, and no customers got harmed or anything. And then we started all over again. And this were where I started to look at, why are we actually using this revenue? Because almost no e-commerce business makes the same margin on the revenue coming in, but we are trying to take an average of the revenue to get some kind of profit that we can actually compare with ad spend. But when it's not the same, it's a win some, lose some game. So I was thinking, why are we not sending in the real profit? Because that's actually what target ROAS is supposed to be, return on ad spend, not revenue on ad spend. There was nothing out there. The same was also, I needed some kind of tool. I was sitting in spreadsheets, but you were not like, it was again averages. I needed something where I could click on a button and see how much profit did I make in the whole business after ad spend and fixed cost the last week or last 2 weeks. So I knew if I could scale more or should scale less, as well as just seeing the profitability in, at that time, it was Analytics Universal. There was nothing out there. So I got a couple of developers to build a simple tool, very, very simple tool for me. But it just worked. Suddenly I could see which ads were actually generating profit, where I was losing money. I could allocate the money much, much better. And that just turned around the business, and it became a healthy business, not as big as before. It was quite big before. It was also big at the end, but not as big, but it was healthy. We made a good profit and so on. So I thought, I have something here that I'm not the only one who have this problem. So I decided to try and sell that company, and I achieved a good exit on that. And then I invested all of that money into making ProfitMetrics, or that tool, into a real business. And that is 4.5 years ago now. I went full time. I had a contract when I made the exit. I had to be in the company for a certain amount of time. And of course there, I was only thinking about ProfitMetrics, but you'll still, keep running the company and handing it over to the new owner. So yeah, that was 4.5 years ago. I went full time in ProfitMetrics.
That's super cool, man. So I didn't know that you actually built sort of V1 or version 0.5 of ProfitMetrics just for yourself, for this previous company, just so that you have the data, the gross or the profit data, so that you know that you're actually profitable or not. So
yeah, and I was just super scared, when what happened was before, I thought, everything is working. I was scaling so aggressively, but what happened after I started all over after the bankruptcy, I was so conservative. I was so scared of what if I'm actually not profitable and so on. So I needed that as a possibility of actually scaling the ad spend again, which I can also see today in the market is always the struggle that e-commerce business owners or managers, they need to make sure they make money. So they set these really high conservative target ROAS because they don't have the transparency, because most businesses have tried, maybe not the situation I was in, but most businesses have tried getting a quarter or some kind of P&L back from their accountant where they got a big, they didn't think they were unprofitable and thought they were profitable, or vice versa. So they get scared.
Hey guys, real quick, if you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss anything in the future, and feel free to share with a friend, colleague, or family member, because that's the only way we can grow this show. All right, back to the show. I think with ecom, it's just such a complex business type to have. With lead gen, it can be much more straightforward. You know how many leads you're generating, the cost per lead, and then you can follow up and you see how many deals are being closed. With ecom, I think it's so complex because you have all these different types of products with high profit margins, low profit margins, high price, low price. Some are getting a lot of spend, some less so. Someone clicks on the ad for one product, then they buy another. It's also so complex. And I think a tool like ProfitMetrics really helps you get the insights into which is actually profitable or not. But just in your opinion, what type of businesses can really benefit from having the insights of profit data, and how can they use this to improve results or report better or anything like that?
Of course, there is these kind of companies where they maybe have a product or two, or it's their own brand, where maybe they're selling something also wholesale, so they cannot do any discounts or anything, where they actually know their margin is always the same. They don't get free shipping or stuff like that. In those cases, a target ROAS is just fine, because then they can actually say, okay, we have 40% of the revenue, that's profit. Then they can actually calculate from that. But as soon as you start using like free shipping, you still have to pay the shipping to DHL, even though you give it out for free, or you start discounting, or you start having varying margins. Maybe you have some products or brands where you have maybe your own brands where you have a super high margin, then you're selling products that are really generic with a lot of competition on them, so the margins are lower. So when we start looking over at retailers where they actually sell a lot of different brands and so on, that's where the big problem occurs, and that is where you're just not getting the full out of your ad spend, because you are probably, in most cases, what we are seeing is actually people are too conservative, because there is orders where they have so low margin, so they're just setting the target ROAS so high so they make sure they make money. And that's actually where we see the most. It's not that people are that unprofitable. It's actually just it's holding them back because they cannot scale the right way. That's often what we see, that there is such a big range of margins. So they're actually not scaling hard enough where they can. And then maybe they are using too much ad spend on something where they're losing money. So just getting that transparency, both in Google, but especially also just looking at your business and be able to see, okay, how is everything as a whole, holistically? What is our profit? Maybe put in your fixed cost, so you also can see, are we actually making a net profit? Or how is our contribution margin, so profit after ad spend? It's just so important insights, because it's not when people do sales, of course the margin goes down, but what often happens is you increase the ad spend because Google start giving you more first positions or top positions when your products are very low priced. So you're actually increasing your ad spend while you're actually decreasing your margins, which doesn't have to be a bad way or a bad thing, but you need to be aware of it. You need to be able to control it while you're doing it, because otherwise you get out of November and thought Black Month were great, and then you actually end up have lost money in that month where you should make most of your profit.
Yeah, indeed. So how can businesses, how can companies start with tracking profit? Where does that begin?
Essentially, it begins with making sure you have some kind of costs of goods. You don't have to have everything on every single product, but if you just start with 20-30% of the most sold products, then it's all about calculating the profit on the order. So previously a lot have done is they have used like margin grouping and so on, using the margin on the product, but in many cases e-commerce businesses sell multiple products per order, and like you said before, people click on one product, buy another one. So it starts by having some kind of system where, of course, I'm a little bit biased. I love ProfitMetrics, but it could also be that you build it yourself, but something where you take every single order and then you calculate the profit on that order and look at discounts, look at free shipping, look at expenses for shipping, payment fees, handling costs. There's a lot of variable costs going into it, which actually sometimes have a lot of impact on the profitability. So starting there, and then of course, if you want to use it, one thing is you can maybe monitor something in just looking at the whole business. You can maybe do it in some spreadsheets and so on. But if you want to get it into Google, you need to enable it to be sent in. So that can either be done by adjustment of conversions, or like we talked about earlier, click IDs where you send it into Google, so get it in there. But I also believe that it's not only Google, because you also have other channels. So if you're also running Meta or such channels, it's also important to have it there, because it doesn't make sense only to have it in one channel. And also as well, it doesn't make sense only to have it in Google. You need to have that holistic overview where you can compare, because as we all know, the channels are in-channel metrics is not the truth. That's like how Google sees the customer journey, or in Meta, how Meta sees the customer journey. But the truth is somewhere between, and that is essentially those back-end numbers, looking at your orders, looking at how much ad spend did we use the last week, what is our fixed cost, and so on. That is essentially the only whole truth, or the real truth, that you can hold everything up to against.
Yeah. So I know that in ProfitMetrics it's super easy to just configure that. You set up the costs, and it automatically will calculate the gross profit for your orders. When you have that data, how can Google Ads specialists use that data to, or how can they make that actionable in their Google Ads campaigns, in their marketing strategies?
I think there's several stages, because the first step that I always recommend, just start there, is just getting that insight in. So you still have your revenue. You're still basing your target ROAS on the revenue, but just having the insight of the profitability, then you can start seeing, okay, this campaign, we don't have high enough target ROAS. We're actually losing money. Or this campaign, we could actually decrease. We have talked with the client a lot of times, and they insist that we need a target ROAS of 8, but we can actually see we are making money. It's breaking even at 5. Now we can see the profit, so it's okay just to run 6, because then we still have some profit there. Just adjusting the target ROAS based on having the profit and the insight. The next step could be start removing products that are super unprofitable, if we're talking about shopping or Performance Max. That's also a good thing, because that's like the lowest hanging fruits. Start moving the products over to its own campaign, like with an advanced campaign structure. So essentially you start moving the averages away, because Google always just needs to hit the average between all the products. So if you have something that is hitting a really high target ROAS that are really profitable, and then you have something that is way beneath your target ROAS, Google can often still use money on that is beneath your target ROAS, simply because something is so profitable that it takes the average up. So just dividing those out in high ROAS or high profitability products and low profitability products, that will actually make sure you always have ad spend enough and can scale your really profitable products further. But again, you also start helping Google's algorithm, because it still needs to hit that target. So if you have removed all the good products away, Google will start doing what we actually want to decrease the bids and try and hit that target. Maybe you get less volume on the unprofitable products, but maybe they can become profitable. And then the next stage would be to change target ROAS to run on real profit. So essentially setting if you have a tool like ProfitMetrics, you will still have your conversion actions with revenue, and then you will have conversion actions with profit. So essentially, where the primary have been revenue before, you would then set that to secondary, and then you would set your profit conversion action to primary. And this is here you need to make a change. And I always recommend the conservative change. And that is essentially where you let Google tell you when to change the target ROAS. So if, let's say you have a target ROAS of 500%, what happens is once you change it over, Google don't understand what revenue or profit is. They just understand the difference between the click price and a value coming out and trying to determine that. So if the value, of course, on profit would be much lower than revenue, then in a couple of days after you change it, you will suddenly see that the average CPC starts dropping, because when Google understands, hey, the conversion value is not as high as we normally get in, then the first thing it will try is to decrease the average CPC. So what you will do there is you'll maybe change your target ROAS down by 15, 20%, just a little. And then what you normally see is then the average target ROAS goes, or the average CPC goes up again. And then in a couple of days, you would see the same thing happen again. Google understands, hey, we're still not getting this conversion value in, so we decrease the bids, and then you do it again. So essentially, you're just over a period of a couple of weeks, depending on the volume. The more volume, you can do a faster shift. The less volume, you maybe go for 2-3 weeks. But then you essentially change your target ROAS, and the goal is to get to a point where Google are still bidding the same click price, but now it just understands that it has a lower value. And from that time going forward, you're actually doing profit bidding. So you are actually, Google starts understanding the difference between a click and the value, but the value is now profit. So you can essentially say, I want €1.5 back in profit every time I use €1. So instead of having that target ROAS of 500% where you don't really know which products are profitable, now you will actually teach Google's algorithm that. And then again, you still have the revenue to measure on as a secondary. So before you were just measuring profit on a secondary, now you can actually do measure the revenue, because revenue is still important. So
Yeah.
that's like the end goal of profit bidding, to get the algorithm to really understand and use it.
That's really great. And you mentioned before that you want to be able to, or you want to look holistically at your data. I'm actually curious if you use the profit data that you mentioned. You have 2 conversion actions, basically one for revenue, one for gross profit. If you optimize for more gross profit in Google Ads and you see that number is increasing, you see the profit margins are better now, we're getting more profit. What do you actually recommend to marketers and Google Ads specialists to report back onto the clients? Because this is still Google data. Do you look at other systems to sort of verify that the overall profit is going up, or what do you look at in that case?
We normally recommend that the client goes into something like our dashboard or have some holistic way of measuring, because essentially at the end of the day, I've been an e-commerce owner for many years. What I cared about was how much profit after ad spend did I make? Am I making a net profit after my fixed cost? If you as a marketer can prove that or show that the profitability, so the contribution margin, if that goes up, everybody is happy. And that allows you to then start scaling the ad spend even further, because you can see the profitability in Google, but seeing it on essentially the backend numbers. So those numbers that are pulled out from the Magento, Lightspeed, or Shopify, whatever platform, those numbers doesn't lie. So if the client or the e-commerce business see that, then everything is good. And then you can essentially also keep on scaling. And that's also where you don't make mistakes, because let's say when enhanced conversion came around, some accounts saw 5 and up to 15-20% lift in conversions value. And that is great, because now Google have much more signals. So I believe that is an amazing thing, but it was not conversions that didn't happen yesterday. So if you suddenly see 10% more in Google, it doesn't mean that there's 10% more orders in the back end of the business. So always, I believe in separating those two things. You're optimizing, you're measuring in Google as a Google Ads expert. You're always trying to improve on that, but you go back and look at the back end, because it could also be because some other marketer, a Facebook marketer, really increased a lot of prospecting ads, and then suddenly there's more in brand, or there's more demand on products that there weren't demand on before. So you're actually capturing a lot more clicks. It doesn't even have to be brand searches, but just there's more demand on people going over to Google searching for this kind of product, and it's actually being impacted by the business own marketing. It's just over in another channel. So just having that place where an order is always only there once, and you can see the revenue, you can see the profits, and so on. It's just a security measurement that you always have that truth to look at, because some things in Google can sometimes be deceiving, where it just looks perfect and everything is going good, but you're actually not seeing an impact on the backend numbers. Yeah, true. And I think you can even become super trustworthy for your clients. They can rely on you and become business partner when you show them that, okay, the Google Ads data looks really good, but this is what we see on the overall level. Maybe we shouldn't scale as hard now because the overall numbers are lacking behind a little bit, or vice versa, whatever it is. But I think those types of conversations is what's going to set you apart from others. And business owners, as you said, they care about what's coming in on the overall level, what's going out, what's my gross and net profit. And if you can have those conversations with them, that's so valuable. Even if you don't actively steer on profits, you just having the insights. There's just such good talking points with clients. Yeah, and that is the future. The buttons we can click on. You write about that every day in Google. There isn't as many buttons we can click on as there was 5 or 10 years ago. True. And essentially, the Google specialist, I have a belief that there will happen a transition that have already started. But it will become much more, the Google specialist will become this strategic partner of the business, essentially going into the business, talking about profitability, saying, hey, we're making a lot of contribution margin. There is a lot of profit after ad spend, but we're not covering your fixed costs. So either you need to lower the fixed cost or we need to drive more volume in to cover it. Having those conversations and talking with the client about what's actually happening in the business, understanding the business and the business argument. I think that is where a lot of the agency space are going to be in the future, like making sure, okay, we have this data, let's feed it to Google. Okay, you want to get rid of some products that are just lying in your warehouse before you get a new products in. Okay, how can we make sure Google gets this data in? How can we make a campaign structure that makes sure we get these products liquidated now, or get that cash free? Some of those conversations where you actually understand the business and then go back in Google and do what the business strategy or goals are. I think that is where we are going.
Yeah, I love that. So how can Google Ads specialists and companies, but let's say we have more Google Ads specialists listening to this than brand owners, how can they get started with tracking profits? Where do they begin in terms of, does it start with just having a conversation with the client? Does it start with finding out these data points, or is it something else?
I think it starts with talking with the client and explaining them what it is and what the benefit is. I believe that if you start talking about profitability, that's where the e-commerce business owners and managers really understand, that is actually what we care about, because that's what paying the bills and that is what paying our salaries and so on. So starting with that conversation, and then it's about looking at what data they have. Every e-commerce business have the cost prices somewhere, because otherwise how can they set a price if they don't know what they're paying for the product? So all of these costs are there. That's some of the things we do in ProfitMetrics, is we try to structure this in a way so it gets super easy. What numbers do you need to have? What is the bare minimum? You don't need 100% of the cost price. Let's just take the 20% most sold products if you don't have them. And what happens automatically once the agency gets the client involved is that once they see that kind of dashboard, where they see that overview I was missing in the past, where they can click on that button and suddenly see something that is close to what they're getting back from their accountant just in real time, that's where they start, okay, we need to have more cost price and we need to put in different shipping methods. Hey, we actually don't pay the same for PayPal as we do for a credit card, and get super excited. And that takes the whole part away from the agency, because now it's the client that actually wants to improve it, and that just helps the agency, because the more profitable, because that's also what happens in that process, that the e-commerce business starts saying, oh my God, why are we giving free shipping so low, or something like that. So these start actually increasing the profitability, which just makes the Google marketer job much easier, because if there is the profitability, they can be much more aggressive, go into more auctions and so on. So that's how our process works, is essentially that we jump online and give the client, together with the agency, a demo and show the product, get them excited about it. And also it's often the end client that actually do the onboarding with us, because they have the costs and so on. And then we explain what the different things are, and then it's just super easy for them to set up. And once everything is set up, then the Google Ads specialist have that profit data and can start report on it, having those conversations and so on. But the client is also involved in it.
Yeah, that's really solid. And for me, always, like, ProfitMetrics is such a no-brainer to use, because as you said, you can also build it yourself. You can use other tools. You can use spreadsheets to gather all the data. But that's what you did initially, and then you built a tool off the back of that. And it's so much more efficient to just do that within ProfitMetrics. So much less prone to errors as well. All right, so Frederik, I want to transition to the rapid fire questions. So I'm going to give you a few options,
Yes.
and it's this or that. You cannot say it depends, and you cannot elaborate on your answers. So the first one is Performance Max or Standard Shopping?
Standard Shopping.
Ooh, interesting. Google has advertisers' best interest in mind. Do you agree or disagree?
Disagree.
Do you think all match types are going to be gone in 2 years except broad match?
No.
No. And do you think search and shopping campaigns will be around in 2 years?
Yes.
not just PMax and demand gen. The last one is, I don't know if you're actually into it this much because you're more on the data side, but broad match, yes or no?
No.
Nice. All right, cool. So, Frederik, to close off the episode, I have one final question, and that is, if you had to share 3 golden nuggets about driving results with Google Ads, what would that be?
That would be pretty basic answers, but essentially start with the conversion tracking. Make sure all of as much, because you'll never have, I say all, but you'll never have 100% tracking in Google. It's not possible. But make sure you have as many signals for the algorithm to work, because that's what it works on. If you don't have all of the conversions there, you will, or the algorithm will be shutting down profitable campaigns that just looks unprofitable because it's not there. So that's probably the first point. The second point is, if you have an e-commerce business with varying margins or discounts or sale periods and so on, of course, biased, but I believe that you should always have the profit, at least for measurement. I still believe that it's best to bid on it, but at least for measurement. And the last one is, have a holistic overview. Now we have talked about profit, but essentially also it's very, very easy to just make a spreadsheet where you take the orders in from Shopify or Magento or something like that. You have your revenue. You use something like Supermetrics or something like that, where you can get the ad spend in and get some kind of overview where you are measuring the holistic numbers. So how many orders is there? Because next thing is that suddenly there is a privacy change or consent mode or something like that. And then you're looking at your numbers and comparing on last year, and those numbers doesn't look correct, but it could just be because there was missing conversions or there was more model conversions or something like that, where backend numbers doesn't lie. So if you can get it out of Shopify, make a simple spreadsheet, it will make it much, much easier to compare periods of what was the actual number of orders or revenue at least. Of course, profit is great to have, and it will give you so much more insight, but just starting with having the real number, something like McNair or blended ROAS, just having that, it gives you that possibility to actually compare, and not only compare in GA4, because you cannot compare GA4 to Universal Analytics, and there is cookies, and then there is tracking problems in a period or something like that where your backend don't lie.
Yeah, that's really solid, man. All right, so thank you, Frederik, for sharing your insights today. Where can people follow you and learn more about ProfitMetrics?
Yeah, as you, right now not as active, but normally pretty active on LinkedIn. So I'm normally sharing if there's some big updates in attribution or tracking or something like that. So find me on LinkedIn. And if people want to test out ProfitMetrics, go to ProfitMetrics.io and book a demo. You can either book a demo as an agency, a marketing agency or freelancer, or if you are an e-commerce business owner or manager, you can, so you get it like a little bit more customized for who you are. But that's a good starting point, and then hear what is possible for your business.
Yeah. And I would highly recommend everyone to, if you're running Google Ads for ecom clients and you have never done anything with profit margins and getting profit data, I highly recommend using ProfitMetrics, because it's just the easiest solution to get all the insights you need. Plus, there's server-side tagging, conversion booster for even more conversions that we didn't even touch on. They just released a new tool that you can use to create a bucketing structure for your campaigns based on profit data. So similar to how Product Hero created theirs with the heroes, sidekicks, villains, zombies, etc. ProfitMetrics has actually built something that's super cool that you can customize based on profit data and POAS data, right, Frederik? So yeah, it's ProfitMetrics, such a no-brainer for ecom clients. That was a plug. I'm not affiliated, but I'm just a fan, and I recommend it to everyone. All right, thank you, Frederik, for coming on, and thanks everyone for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all this stuff, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.
Thank you, Miles.
All right, that's the end of this episode of the PPC Mastery Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you don't want to miss any future episodes, we're going to be back next week. Then don't forget to subscribe and share with a friend, family member, or a colleague, because that's the only way we can grow this show. Now, there's 2 more things I want to share with you if you want to take your Google Ads game to the next level. The first one is, if you want to get advanced Google Ads tips delivered straight into your inbox on Mondays and Fridays, head over to ppcmastery.com/newsletter to subscribe to our newsletter called the PPC Edge. And next to that, if you want to really take your skills to the next level and become the best Google Ads specialist you can possibly be, then consider joining the PPC Hub, which is our coaching and community platform for experienced Google Ads specialists. You can find everything about it on ppcmastery.com/hub.